1st February 1945. 1:52 in the afternoon. The Malacca Strait, 15 miles off the Sumatran coast. Lieutenant Ian Edward Fraser, aged 22, crouched at the periscope of His Majesty's submarine XE-3. The lens showed 6 Japanese cargo vessels steaming in line ahead, escorts flanking them like sheepdogs. In the next 23 minutes, he would sink 4 of those ships, cripple a 5th, and vanish before the Japanese understood what had struck them. This was the day the British proved that youth, when paired with ruthless training and absolute nerve, could devastate an enemy that believed themselves untouchable. The Japanese had calculated every variable. Shallow water made submarine attacks suicide. Narrow channels forced predictable courses. Coastal air cover patrolled overhead. 3 escort sub-chasers screened the convoy. They had calculated everything except one Royal Navy midget submarine commander who refused to wait for darkness. Fraser was 22 years old when he did this. If you believe his name deserves to be spoken long after we're gone, subscribe now, because forgetting them is the only defeat that truly matters. Fraser's voice crackled through the control room, clipped and flat. Range 2,000 yards. Bearing steady. Standby tubes 1 and 2. The question driving this story: how did a single officer in a vessel barely larger than a London bus achieve what an entire destroyer flotilla would hesitate to attempt? The convoy's cargo manifest told the story of desperation. Aviation fuel, artillery ammunition, canned rations, replacement engines, medical supplies. Every item was precious. Every ton meant another week the Japanese could hold Singapore, Sumatra, the entire southern resource area. The route had been chosen with meticulous care. Water depth 60 to 80 feet, too shallow for conventional submarines to maneuver safely. A fleet boat caught here would scrape bottom, unable to dive beneath depth charges. Channel width less than 4 miles at the narrowest point. No room for evasion, no space for mistakes. Distance from shore 7 miles, close enough for land-based Mitsubishi Ki-51 reconnaissance aircraft to orbit continuously, close enough for coastal artillery to shell any surface threat. Escort strength, 3 Char-class sub-chasers, each armed with depth charges, 25mm cannon, and hydrophones. They steamed in a protective screen, 1 ahead, 2 on the flanks. The Japanese reasoning was flawless. Their weapons faced seaward, scanning for threats from the deep ocean. Danger, they believed, could only approach from the Andaman Sea, from the direction of British Ceylon. They were watching the wrong direction. The attack would come from the coast itself, from the shallow water they considered their shield, from a vessel so small it had slipped past their offshore pickets like a ghost. Their confidence was not arrogance, it was mathematics, and in war, mathematics only works when you know all the variables. Answer honestly. If you were that Japanese convoy commander, with every advantage calculated, every precaution taken, what would you have done differently? Tell me in 1 sentence below. At 1:47 p.m., 5 minutes before Fraser gave the order, his hydrophone operator heard something. Twin screws, high revolutions, closing from the northeast. A 4th escort, not marked on the intelligence briefing. The numbers had just changed. Ian Edward Fraser had joined the Royal Navy in June 1939, 3 months before war was declared. He was 17 years old. By 1941, at 19, he had volunteered for submarines. Conventional fleet boats first, the endless diesel stench, the claustrophobia, the cold North Atlantic patrols hunting U-boats and screening convoys. He learned patience, he learned silence, he learned that error at depth was death. In 1943, at 21, he volunteered again, this time for the experimental midget submarine program, X-Craft. The training officer's briefing had been characteristically blunt. 50% fatality rate in training accidents alone, higher in combat. No decorations if you fail. No publicity if you succeed. Dismissed. Fraser stayed. Training included placing limpet mines on battleship hulls in Loch Striven while frigates hunted overhead, navigating submerged through minefields using dead reckoning, escaping flooded compartments in total darkness, surviving depth charge near misses that ruptured eardrums and cracked ribs. In September 1943, during a practice attack on HMS Vanguard, his ex-craft tangled in anti-torpedo nets at 40 feet. The escape hatch jammed. Oxygen lasted 90 minutes. Fraser calmly cut through the net cable with hand tools while his crewmate monitored carbon dioxide levels. They surfaced with 8 minutes of breathable air remaining. The instructor's report stated Letty Fraser displayed no panic, methodical throughout, recommended for operational deployment. In April 1944, Fraser participated in his first combat patrol, penetrating Phuket Harbour, Thailand, placing limpet charges on a Japanese ammunition transport. The ship exploded 3 hours after XE-3 cleared the harbour mouth. Fraser's patrol report contained 47 words, no mention of heroism, just times, bearings, depths, outcomes. British understatement was not affectation, it was doctrine. Now, 13 months later, he was hunting again. His Majesty's submarine XE-3 was not built for comfort. She was built for one purpose, to reach places where larger submarines would die. Length, 51 feet, barely longer than a cricket pitch. Beam, 5 feet 6 inches, narrower than a tube carriage. Displacement, 30 tons submerged. A destroyer, displaced 2,000. Crew, 4 men. Commander, First Lieutenant, engine room artificer, diver. No spare space, no spare hands. Propulsion. Gardner diesel engine surfaced, electric motor submerged. Maximum speed, 6.5 knots submerged. Slower than a man jogging. Range, 80 miles submerged at 2 knots. Fuel capacity limited operational radius to coastal waters. Armament, side-mounted explosive charges 2 tons each. No torpedoes, no deck gun, no defensive weapons whatsoever. Diving depth, 300 feet rated. Nobody tested maximum depth. Nobody wanted to know. But in shallow coastal waters, in narrow straits, in environments where fleet submarines could not operate, XE-3 was perfect. She sat low in the water, periscope height barely 3 feet above surface, from an aircraft invisible unless you knew precisely where to look. Her electric motor made no noise. Hydrophone struggled to distinguish her from tidal currents. Her tiny silhouette gave escorts nothing to target. ASDIC beams scattered off her rounded hull, returning false echoes that confused operators. She was not a warship. She was a surgical instrument, and Fraser wielded her with a surgeon's precision. The patrol had begun 4 days earlier, departing from Trincomalee, Ceylon, towed, submerged behind the fleet submarine, HMS Stygian, to conserve fuel. Release point, 20 miles offshore from Sumatra, under cover of darkness. The conditions inside XE-3 defied description to anyone who had not experienced them. Temperature, 110 degrees Fahrenheit at midday. No air conditioning. Ventilation only when surfaced. Humidity, near saturation. Everything dripped. Metal sweated. Instruments fogged. The charts turned to pulp. Water ration, 1 pint per man per day. Not enough, never enough. Thirst became constant. Sleep, impossible submerged. The diesel needed tending, the helm needed holding, navigation required checking. 4 men, endless duties, no rest. Routine, dive at dawn, creep towards the coast at 2 knots, surface after dark to charge batteries and gulp air, submerge again before first light. On the 3rd night, Fraser's hydrophone operator detected increased traffic, multiple sets of screws, merchant vessel signatures, heading southwest through the Malacca Strait. Intelligence had predicted a convoy. Intelligence had been correct. Fourth day, 1:00 p.m., XE-3 lay submerged at periscope depth, 40 feet down, creeping parallel to the Sumatran coast. Fraser had the periscope up for 5-second intervals every 3 minutes. Longer exposure risked visual detection. 1:34 p.m., smoke on the horizon, bearing 270. 1:41 p.m., masts visible. Multiple ships, line ahead, formation. 1:47 p.m., full identification. 6 cargo vessels, 3 escorts, 1 additional escort closing from northeast. 1:52 p.m., everything changed. Fraser's voice quiet as a prayer. Attack bearing, stand by for surface approach. In the control room, silence absolute. The decision to attack surfaced violated every tactical doctrine. Submarines attacked, submerged, unseen, protected by depth. But Fraser had calculated the variables. Underwater visibility was 4 feet in the silt-choked strait. He needed visual range to ensure hits, and the Japanese, watching for submarines from seaward, would never expect a surfaced midget boat attacking from the coastal shallows. It was brilliant. Or it was suicide. The next 23 minutes would determine which. Through the periscope lens, Fraser counted carefully. Lead ship, cargo freighter, approximately 4,000 tons riding low, fully laden, twin masts, single funnel, bearing 265, speed 8 knots. Second ship, smaller, perhaps 3,000 tons, higher in the water, partial cargo, less valuable, but still a worthy target. Third through 6th ships, similar configurations, varying tonnage, all heavy with supplies. Formation, line ahead, 500 yards spacing between vessels. Standard Japanese coastal convoy doctrine. Predictable courses, predictable speeds, predictable everything. Escorts, 3 confirmed sub-chasers, Che-class, 200 tons each, twin depth, charge racks aft, hydrophones active. The 4th escort, Fraser's operator had detected, was now identified. Another Cha-class, steaming on the convoy's landward flank, uncomfortably close. Air cover, single Mitsubishi Ki-51 orbiting 2 miles ahead of the convoy, low altitude, slow speed. Reconnaissance pattern, not attack posture. The pilot was bored, routine patrol. He expected nothing. Fraser calculated tonnage mentally, conservatively, 18,000 tons of shipping. Realistically, closer to 22,000. Every ton sunk was food not eaten, fuel not burned, ammunition not fired. Every ton sunk shortened the war, small ships perhaps, but full cargo, full targets. The Japanese had one advantage, numbers, 4 armed escorts against a single, unarmed midget submarine. Fraser had 2 advantages, surprise, and a crew that trusted him absolutely. He lowered the periscope. Range 1,800 yards, bearing steady. Will attack from their blind quarter, surface approach, minimum silhouette. His first lieutenant, Sub-Lieutenant William James Lanyon Smith, aged 20, said nothing, nodded once. At 1:55 p.m. the 4th escort altered course, directly towards XE-3's position. Coincidence or detection? No way to know. Fraser ordered 30 feet. They slipped beneath the thermocline and waited. 2 minutes of silence. Hydrophone operator listening, counting screw revolutions, judging distance. Fraser watched the depth gauge, the trim, the angle. Steady, silent, invisible. 1:57 p.m., screw noise fading. The escort had turned away. Coincidence, after all. Fraser, periscope depth, resume attack bearing. The clock had started. A cautious commander would have done the mathematics differently. Conventional wisdom dictated shadow the convoy throughout the afternoon, wait for darkness, attack submerged under cover of night, escape in the confusion. Lower risk, higher survival probability, acceptable outcome. But conventional wisdom assumed time was available. It assumed the convoy would maintain course. It assumed no additional escorts would join. It assumed darkness guaranteed advantage. Fraser's assessment eliminated assumptions. Fact 1. Convoy would reach Singapore in 14 hours. Attack now or lose opportunity. Fact 2. Nightfall brought calmer seas. Periscope wake more visible. Hydrophones more effective. Fact 3. More escorts likely after dark. Japanese coastal waters were never undefended at night. Fact 4. Surprise, once lost, never returned. The British approach to command was unambiguous. Initiative belonged to the man on scene. Admiralty provided objectives. Execution method belonged to the commander. Fraser made the decision in 11 seconds. We attack now, surface approach from landward quarter. They'll be watching seaward. We'll be behind them before they understand. Smith, the first lieutenant, permitted himself the ghost of a smile. Understood, sir. In the engine room artificer Charles Alfred Reed, aged 23, wiped sweat from his eyes and checked battery charge. 87%. Enough for sprint speed if needed, enough for escape. Probably. Diver James Joseph McGuinness, aged 25, secured equipment and wedged himself into his station. Nothing to do now but wait and trust. The attack clock had started at 1:52 p.m. Now at 1:58 p.m. XE-3 turned towards the enemy. Fraser brought XE-3 to periscope depth. 40 feet, electric motor minimum revolutions, 2 knots, silent running protocol. The periscope broke surface for 3 seconds. Enough for a bearing. Down again. Japanese convoy bearing Bay 263. Range 3,500 yards. Steady course. No indication of alarm. Fraser calculated intercept geometry mentally. Convoy speed 8 knots. XE-3 speed 2 knots submerged. Closing angle 40 degrees off their port quarter. Time to firing position 18 minutes. Too long submerged. Battery drain unacceptable. He needed speed. The decision was immediate. Surface. 1:59 p.m. XE-3 broke surface. Diesel engine coughed, caught, roared to life. 6 knots now. Faster, faster still. Fraser kept only the conning tower above water, minimum profile. The hull remained submerged. From a distance, they resembled driftwood, a floating log, anything except a submarine. The gamble was calculated. The Japanese escorts watched seaward. Their hydrophones listened for submerged threats. A surfaced contact from landward, from the shallow coastal water they considered safe, would register as a fishing boat. Maybe. 2:04 p.m., range 2,500 yards. No reaction from escorts. Fraser's visibility was perfect now. Clear afternoon, slight haze, sun behind him. The Japanese were silhouetted against the western horizon. Beautiful. 2:07 p.m., range 2,000 yards. Then complication. The landward escort altered course, not aggressively, not attacking, just routine zigzag standard anti-submarine maneuver. But the new course brought the escort directly across XE-3's bearing. Fraser's options compressed to 2, maintain course and risk visual detection at close range, or turn away and lose position. He chose a third option, crash dive. Dive, 30 feet, slow ahead. 40 seconds from surface to depth. The diesel cut, electric motor engaged. Silence returned. Through the hull, they heard it. Screw noise. Close, very close. The escort passed overhead, twin propellers thrashing the water directly above them. In the control room, nobody moved, nobody breathed. One mechanical failure, one dropped tool, one cough would betray them. Hydrophones worked both directions. Fraser watched the depth gauge. 28 feet, 29, steady at 30. The screw noise peaked, then faded. The escort passed, unseeing, unhearing. 2:09 p.m. Fraser waited 60 seconds. Periscope depth be slow ahead. The periscope showed the escort resuming station, oblivious. Shallow water. No room to dive deep. No room to run, but room, barely, to kill. XE-3 was not equipped with torpedo tubes. She carried side-mounted explosive charges designed for attacking ships at anchor, not moving targets. But Fraser had modified the tactical doctrine. During training, he had experimented with using the charges as mines. Surface, position the submarine directly in a target's path, release charges with timed fuses, dive clear, let the target sail into the explosion, crude, effective, lethal. Now he refined the method. 2:11 p.m. XE-3 surfaced again, briefly, positioning herself 1,500 yards ahead of the convoy, directly in their track. Fraser calculated target speed, course, charge, sink rate, fuse delay. Lead ship speed, 8 knots. That's 13 feet per second. Charge, sink rate, 4 feet per second. Water depth, 70 feet. Fuse delay, 20 seconds maximum. The mathematics had to be perfect. Too early, charges sink too deep, ships pass overhead untouched. Too late, charges still sinking, ships already passed. Fraser recalculated. Again. 2:12 p.m. Standby port charge, fusing 20 seconds. Smith's hands moved across the controls. Mechanical, precise, no wasted motion. Port charge fused and ready. Fraser. Range 1,200 yards. Steady. Then complication. The starboard charge mechanism jammed. Warning light red. Smith diagnosed immediately. Hydraulic pressure loss. Cable snapped or valve seized. No time to strip and repair. No time to diagnose. Fraser's decision was instant. Secure starboard charge. We fire port only. 1 chance. 1 charge. 6 targets. The mathematics had changed again, but 1 charge meant 1 ship, and 1 ship sunk justified the entire patrol. 2:13 p.m. Range 1,000 yards. Overhead, the Mitsubishi Ki-51 droned past. 300 feet altitude, pilot scanning seaward, not down, not at the tiny conning tower barely breaking surface in the shadow of the coast. Fraser's voice, calm as discussing weather. Range 800 yards. Release port charge on my mark. Smith's hand on the lever, waiting. 700 yards. The lead ship's bow was visible now without periscope. Huge. Closing. 600 yards, Mark. Smith pulled the lever. Mechanical clunk. 2 tons of explosive dropped free, sinking into the murky water. Fraser. Dive. 60 feet, full ahead. XE-3 nose down, electric motor screaming at maximum revolutions, clawing for depth and distance. 60 feet. The seabed was 70. No margin, no safety. They waited. 2:14 p.m., 37 seconds after release. The explosion propagated through water faster than sound through air. The shock wave hit XE-3 like a hammer. Hull flexed, rivets groaned, light bulbs shattered, depth gauge cracked. Fraser fought the helm. XE-3 bucked, rolled 15 degrees, recovered. In the engine room, Reed grabbed stanchions and held on. Battery acid sloshed but didn't spill. Motor kept running. Enough. The noise was beyond description, a physical force, a pressure wave that compressed lungs and stopped thought. Then secondary explosions, the lead ship's cargo, ammunition, aviation fuel, something volatile. The initial charge had broken the hull. The cargo had finished the job. Fraser risked periscope depth. 30 seconds up. Enough. Through the lens, chaos, lead ship, bow, gone, literally gone. 30 feet of superstructure simply absent, replaced by fire and smoke. The ship was sinking bow first, stern lifting clear of the water, propeller still turning uselessly in the air. Second ship, too close to the explosion, blast damage visible along the port side. She was slewing out of formation, losing way, hull plates buckled. Third ship, turning hard to starboard, desperate to evade whatever had killed the lead. Escorts, racing in all directions, depth charges rolling from their racks, hydrophones pinging frantically, searching for a submarine contact that no longer existed where they expected. The Japanese had trained for submarine attack from seaward, from deep water, from fleet boats that attacked with torpedoes at range. They had never conceived of an attack from landward, from a surfaced midget submarine dropping mines directly in their path. Their doctrine had no answer. Their training offered no solution. They were improvising, and improvisation in combat was another word for panic. Share this account with anyone who understands that war is won not by strength alone, but by the enemy's realization they have already lost. Fraser lowered the periscope. They never saw us. 60 feet, course 120, slow ahead. But the Japanese, though confused, were not helpless. At 2:15 p.m., one escort commander made the correct deduction. If the explosion came from a mine, the submarine that laid it was shallow, close to shore, likely heading southeast along the coast to escape. He signaled the other escorts and turned directly towards XE-3's position. The hunt had begun. Fraser's single charge had achieved what 6 torpedoes might not have: absolute chaos. 4:14 p.m., lead ship sinking, bow submerged, stern vertical. She would be gone in 4 minutes. 2:15 p.m., second ship dead in water. Her master had ordered emergency stop, fearing mines ahead. The blast had damaged her hull, sprung plates, fractured frames. She was taking water, not sinking quickly, but sinking. 2:16 p.m., third ship attempted to reverse engines, panic response, standard Japanese doctrine when encountering mines. But reversing, full at 8 knots, shattered her reduction gears. She was crippled, dead weight in the channel. Fourth ship turned north, directly towards shallow water, running from imagined mines. She grounded on a sandbar at full speed. High tide was 6 hours away. She wasn't moving. Fifth and sixth ships scattered. One fled northwest, abandoning formation. The other circled uselessly, master waiting for orders that would never come. 4 ships destroyed. 2 escaped from a single charge. But the mathematics of destruction were only part of the equation. The strategic impact was larger. Every ship sunk. 3,000 to 5,000 tons of supplies lost. Multiply by 4, 16,000 tons minimum. That was food for 50,000 troops for 2 weeks, fuel for 600 aircraft sorties, ammunition for 40 artillery batteries for 3 days. But more importantly, the route itself became compromised. The Japanese had considered the Malacca Strait safe. Submarine attack in shallow coastal waters was supposed to be impossible. Now, it wasn't. After this attack, every convoy through the strait would require double escorts. Every ship would reduce speed. Every master would fear what lurked in the shallows. Shipping tonnage through the Malacca Strait would drop by 40% over the following month. Not because of continued attacks, though those would come, but because of fear, because the British had proven the impossible. 1 submarine, 1 officer, 1 charge. Strategic impact far beyond tonnage. But first, Fraser had to survive the next 15 minutes. The escort commander who had deduced XE-3's position was competent. His name was unknown to British intelligence, his fate unrecorded, but his tactical response was professional. 2:16 p.m. he positioned his sub-chaser between XE-3's presumed location and the open sea, cutting off escape. He signaled the other escorts to form a search line, spacing 400 yards, sweeping southeast along the coast. Standard doctrine, correct procedure. It should have worked. XE-3 was at 60 feet, creeping at 2 knots on a bearing of 120, heading for deeper water offshore where they could sprint, submerged, and escape. 2:17 p.m. hydrophone operator's voice, tight with control. Single screw closing from astern, fast. Fraser, 70 feet. They nosed down. The keel touched mud at 68 feet. Not enough depth, not enough room. Fraser, all stop, silent running. The motor died. They drifted, carried by current, soundless. Through the hull, the escort screws grew louder, hydrophone pinging, active sonar, searching. Then the first depth charge pattern. Escorts dropped depth charges in patterns, not individually. 4 charges per pattern, set to detonate at different depths, creating overlapping kill zones. The first pattern detonated 200 yards astern, far enough for safety, close enough to feel. The shock wave lifted XE3's stern, slammed her down. Instruments shattered, the depth gauge already cracked, split completely, useless. Overhead lights gone, emergency lighting flickered, failed, came back. In the darkness, Fraser called the helm. "Maintain trim, silent routine." Nobody answered. They knew. Speaking wasted air. Second pattern, closer, 150 yards. The escort was walking the charges towards them. Standard procedure, tightening the noose. This detonation cracked the periscope housing. Water sprayed through the seal. Smith grabbed a wooden plug, hammered it into place. The spray became a drip. Good enough. Fraser checked his watch by the dim emergency light. 2:19 p.m., 3 minutes since the attack began. An eternity submerged under depth charge attack. Third pattern, 100 yards. The lights went out completely this time. Emergency cells dead. In absolute darkness, Fraser felt the boat roll, heard men slide across the deck plates, heard someone grunt as they collided with equipment. Then the lights returned. Reed, in the engine room, had bypassed a blown fuse. Temporary, but enough. Fourth pattern, 70 yards. This one was close enough to rupture eardrums. Fraser's nose bled. He ignored it. Blood in water didn't matter if you were dead. The escorts dropped 16 depth charges in 6 minutes, 16 chances to die, 16 failures to kill. But XE3 had advantages. She was tiny. ASDIC beams scattered off her curved hull. Hydrophone struggled to distinguish her electric motor from background noise. And the seabed created acoustic shadows, dead zones where sound didn't penetrate. Fraser had positioned the boat in one of those shadows. Not intentionally, he lacked the equipment to detect them, but luck, experience, and desperation had placed XE3 in the single location where the escorts could not find her. 2:25 p.m., screw noise fading. The escorts were moving away, searching further southeast, convinced XE3 had escaped towards deeper water. They were wrong. She was still in the shallows, barely moving, bleeding hydraulic fluid and battery acid, but alive. Fraser waited. 5 minutes? 10. Listening. 2:35 p.m. Screw noise distant now. Safe. Probably. Fraser. Slow ahead, course 150, periscope depth. They crept towards the surface. Slow as a dying fish. Quiet as the grave. 2:41 p.m. XE3 reached periscope depth. Fraser risked 10 seconds of observation, enough to see the result. Convoy location scattered across 2 miles of sea. No formation, no order. Lead ship, gone, sunk. Only debris remained, oil slick spreading. Second ship, bow down, stern high, sinking slowly. Maybe 30 minutes left. Third ship, dead in water, listing 10 degrees to port. Her engines were silent. She would survive, but require towing to port. Weeks of repairs. Fourth ship, grounded on the sandbar, visible as a dark shape against the coastline. She would refloat at high tide, but her hull was damaged. More repairs, more delay. Fifth ship, fleeing northwest at full speed, smoke pouring from her stacks. She had abandoned the convoy. Sixth ship, circling the wreckage, her master paralyzed by indecision. Escorts, the 3 original Che-class sub-chasers, were scattered, searching, confused. The fourth escort, the one that had nearly found XE3, was damaged. Fraser could see her listing moving slowly. A depth charge detonating too close to her own hull had cracked frames. Friendly fire, panic response, 4 ships destroyed or crippled, 1 escort damaged, 2 ships escaped, 1 submarine, intact, preparing to withdraw. Fraser lowered the periscope. Smith logged the results. Time, 14:52 hours. Position, 15 miles west-southwest of Sabang. 4 enemy cargo vessels destroyed or rendered inoperable. 1 escort damaged, own damage, periscope seal compromised, depth gauge destroyed, battery mounts cracked. Remaining battery power, 41%. Smith wrote in pencil. Neat handwriting despite exhausted hands. The patrol report would be typed later in Trincomalee, But the facts mattered now while memory remained sharp. Fraser's voice was flat. Course 180, depth 60 feet, speed 3 knots, make for rendezvous point Echo. HMS Stygian would be waiting 40 miles offshore, ready to tow XE3 back to Ceylon. They would arrive in 3 days, exhausted, filthy, victorious. The strategic result would become clear within weeks. Japanese convoys through the Malacca Strait immediately increased escort strength from 3 to 6 vessels per convoy. Speed reduced from 8 knots to 5. Routes moved further offshore, adding 12 hours to journey time. Shipping tonnage through the strait dropped 38% in March 1945 compared to February. Every ton not delivered was a victory. But Fraser would never know those statistics. They were Admiralty numbers, intelligence assessments, strategic analysis. His world was simpler. Targets, ranges, bearings, results. He had executed his duty. That was enough. XE3 reached HMS Stygian at 0420 hours on 3rd February 1945. Fraser's verbal report to the fleet submarine's commander lasted 90 seconds. His written report, filed 4 days later in Trincomalee, consumed 2 pages. Half of that concerned technical defects requiring dockyard attention. There was no press release, no BBC broadcast, no newspaper coverage. The patrol remained classified until 1947. When declassified, it earned 3 paragraphs in the official Royal Navy history of submarine operations in Southeast Asia. Fraser received the Victoria Cross 6 months after the war ended, not for this patrol, but for a subsequent operation penetrating Singapore Harbour. The citation mentioned repeated acts of courage and determination. It did not mention his age. It did not mention that he had pioneered tactics that redefined midget submarine operations. It did not mention this convoy, but the statistics told the truth the citations omitted. 23 minutes from commencement to withdrawal, 1 explosive charge deployed, 4 enemy ships destroyed or crippled, 1 escort damaged, 0 friendly casualties. No decoration adequately measured that mathematics. In 1982, aged 59, Fraser granted a single interview to a naval historian researching X-craft operations. Asked about the Malacca Strait Patrol, Fraser's response was characteristically brief. We had 1 charge remaining after the starboard mechanism failed. I positioned us in the convoy's track and released it with a 20-second fuse. The lead ship sailed directly over the charge. The explosion caused more chaos than I'd anticipated. The escorts dropped a considerable number of depth charges, but they were searching in the wrong locations. We withdrew to the rendezvous point without further incident. The historian pressed. But surely the tactical innovation, attacking surfaced from landward. That must have been a difficult decision. Fraser considered the question for 11 seconds. Then, the Japanese were watching seaward. We attacked from where they weren't looking. Seemed straightforward at the time. That was the end of the interview. Seemed straightforward. 23 minutes, 4 ships, 6 lives at risk, strategic impact lasting months. Just another day's work. The truth Fraser would not articulate, because British officers of his generation did not articulate such things. Age mattered less than training. Heroism mattered less than nerve. Victory mattered less than duty executed with absolute precision. He had been 22 years old. His crew's average age was 22. They had trained for 3 years. They had trusted each other absolutely. And when the moment demanded action, they had acted. The Japanese convoy had believed themselves safe. Shallow water, narrow channels, coastal defences, escort screen. They had calculated every variable except one. They had underestimated the young British officer who refused to accept impossibility as answer. 1:52 p.m. attack commences. 2:15 p.m. attack concluded. 23 minutes. That's all it took to prove that audacity, when paired with training and crew competence, could devastate an enemy that believed themselves untouchable. Fraser never called himself a hero. He would have rejected the word. But history records what modesty conceals. He was. Press like in remembrance of Fraser and his crew. Leave one word of judgment below. And subscribe, because these stories must outlive us all. Thank you for watching Britain in Battle.